Hey guys, how's it going? It's Taylor from RufandRuleMedia here. I'm doing a little bit of a spotlight on a game that I played called Valley. So Valley is a game that came out around 2016 or so by a developer known as Blue Owl Studios. If you don't know who Blue Owl Studios is, especially if you grew up in the mid to late 2000s, you're going to know a game known as Slender the Arrival, which was the sequel to Slender the Eight Pages. So they are the makers of that. Actually didn't know that till I looked it up. Thought that was actually pretty interesting. So the game itself is pretty overly simplistic. I just want to give a couple thoughts on it. So basically the game itself takes place over in these like rocky mountain areas and this very mystical valley like area where your character goes hiking and over there discovers that there's so much more to this valley than meets the eye. During that time he collects this weird exosuit thing that allows you to run. It's an exosuit. It allows you to run, jump, and one of the coolest additions is actually using life energy to bring life to plants and animals, or even take life from plants and animals to power your suit. The mechanic itself, to me, is actually really quite brilliant. The fact that not only does it power, you can use your little abilities, you can collect these orbs and stuff, and then shooting at certain trees or animals will give them life or even take life, depending on what button you press. But it also ties into your actually whole meter of life and death itself. So when you die in this game, because you can die, I mean, one, there's some enemies that I'll get to in a little bit later, and on top of it, there's also some environmental hazards like falling off a cliff and stuff. You will be transported back almost like a regular, respawn point. However, what happens is there's a little meter with a leaf on it, and that meter will end up dissipating. And it basically means that the environment is dying in order to keep you alive. Now, they bring it up more into the story of it, which the story itself is pretty wild for what seemed to be just like a very simplistic game. And it was kind of, the story itself, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't too interested in myself, but it wasn't like it was a bad story. It was just kind of like, it felt like a little all over the place, especially because there's nothing really direct. And a lot of the stuff that you get from that are via audio logs, very similar to something like BioShock. Now, like I said, the story's pretty nonsensical and all over the place, but for the most part, it is relatively pretty solid. It just wasn't super into it. Personally, I was having way too much fun with the big highlight of the game, which is using the exosuit. Now, the exosuit itself, gameplay-wise, is actually really fun. Traversal is super fun. You're sprinting, jumping, all that other kind of stuff. Now, when you run down hills, you'll get more speed. So, like, you might get more speed and then take off on a ramp that'll launch you partially across, like, a cavern or something like that. All of that is absolutely exhilarating in a really, really fun way. On top of that, they also give you some upgrades allowing you to run on water, giving you a grapple hook, which there's a segment with the grapple hook that is absolutely phenomenal. And those moments are the best moments of the game, by far. Like, the amount of gameplay and stuff you can do, traversing and all that, is the best part of the game, full stop. And I think, overall, if you don't enjoy the story, you'll at least enjoy the gameplay for the most part. Now, I say for the most part because there is moments where you do have to actually use combat, and the combat itself is not very engaging at all. You have basically, there's two types of enemies. There's these mystical looking evil ones that come out at like the last 80% of the game, and then there's these little insect ones that you'll end up meeting every once in a while. And they're not like they're super difficult to take out, but it almost seems like I don't even really know the reason for why they were there. The insect one's fine, and I mean, they make sense in terms of theatrical story, but the combat itself is just you kind of blasting them. There's no real reticle in case of how to fire, so sometimes you can get a little messed up about it, but they're not really that difficult. It just, I don't know, in a game that to me that had so much fun with the traversal, the combat part kind of slows it down, and it's just not in a fun way. But overall, the game itself is actually pretty good. I would recommend picking it up. If you could, pick it up for cheap on like a sale or something like that. I don't personally think it's worth full price for the game, but I do think it's worth at least like a sale one because it is a good time and it does have at least an intriguing story. A wild but kind of intriguing story, and the gameplay is really fun. I mean, I kind of use it as like my therapy game sometimes when I just want to run around and not really do anything. Now, if after all of that, I mean, if I were to really give it a review out of 10 score, I don't really want to do that. But I think it's definitely worth its time. If you look it up online on the some of the review pages, you'll see that it's pretty mixed. Some people give it a really high score. Some people give it like a 5. Some people give it a 9. But most of it seemed between in like the 7 ranges. So do what you want with that information. That's completely up to you. But with all that being said, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. I might try to do more of these quick review games. And I'm Taylor from Rough and Rule Media, and I will see you in the next one.